Welcome to Contractor Sales Academy podcast. It is just Derek and myself, Tom, today. And dude,
What's up?
I know you and I are both feeling feisty about some going on in the contractor world right now. We're just going to call it out here today. And I want to start, there's a bunch of stuff going on all our social media pages and all that bullshit right now. And I'm going to just start by sharing the post that I made that kind of kicked it off. Okay, and I'm going to read it. And I just said, if contractors were as committed to selling their work at a 50% gross profit as they are at defending and justifying all the reasons why they can't or won't, there'd be a lot fewer struggling contractors. And then ensued 50, 60, 80 comments about, you don't know my situation, you don't know my industry, you're in the head. One guy had the audacity, which I guess I can't blame him because he doesn't know me, right? He doesn't know me, I don't know him, but he's like, well, I'd like to see how your theory worked during the recession in 2008, to which I replied, well, and I didn't say and I don't think he's a mother. I'm just feisty right now. I said, well, dude, as a matter of fact, I raised my man-hour charges $20 a man-hour in November of 2008 because we looked at when the economy took a dive, we still had our overhead to recover. And when the economy takes a dive, your phone generally rings a little less or a lot less. That means you have less at-bats to recover your fucking overhead and not even make a profit, net profit, but just hit your break even. So we actually ran all these scenarios in the math, and the only one that made sense was practically was charged $20 more per man hour. And you know what's funny, Derek?
What's up?
Because I knew my numbers. I was confident in what we were doing, that it was the right move because we ran all these different scenarios. That confidence actually filled the schedule that winter. Like, we had no work on the calendar. And I literally came in a week later. I told my business partner who ran the field, I said, craziest thing happened. I just filled the next month. He's like, how'd you do that? I said, I raised our rates $20.
That's it.
So
That's it.
Derek, what's at the heart of this bullshit mindset with contractors that you can't get a 50% gross profit on your work?
It's just in your head. It's in your head because all these years you have been taught how to be a contractor, how to price things, how to do things. You've been trained. Well, guess what, motherfucker? You were trained the wrong way.
You were trained by somebody who's broke.
Exactly.
And struggling. You're trained by your dad like me, or your uncle, or your best friend. I mean, look, whatever. Don't even get me started. But
well, this goes back to, and it was in the post. I believe it was in this one or in the thread, that when you and I were coaching, you were coaching me years ago, and I misunderstood you, and you said you need to charge a 50% gross profit margin, and somehow I heard 60%. So because I wasn't trained by all the ignorant contractors of the past, I just went, oh, he said 60. So, okay, let me put my numbers together on this job. Let me do this. Okay, this is 60%. I get on the phone, selling shit at 60%. And then you and I have a conversation. You're like, how in the fuck are you doing that? It's like, what do you mean? You told me to do it. He's like, no, I didn't. So it's the mindset. And
I said, get 50, and you came back with 60.
Yeah.
Because it's what you believe, right?
That's just what I thought. And it's all over the internet now. It's everything. Mindset. And it really is just that. I mean, you're going to get what you charge, and you're going to get what you're worth, but you got to quit defending and saying, I can't.
Yeah.
It's not working. So you keep singing the same song over and over and over. Oh, I don't get it.
Yeah, there's a post I'm actually looking for right now in our 100K group, which is also our sales training group in the bridge and all that other stuff. And I want to read this because this is really interesting and it has to do with this because there's a lot of shit here. So, all right, here it is. One of our members who's in the bridge and 100K and this and that, he says, so as embarrassing as this is, I'd like to introduce you guys. And he wrote down his job costing. He says, I'd like to introduce you guys to the first job I priced and produced for about 50%. Okay. Here's the key thing here. I got punched in the mouth pretty hard on my last bathroom remodel because I didn't price it anywhere near 50%. I racked up some debt just to finish that job and not go broke. Thankfully, this job now allows me to pay that debt off. But I'm sitting here thinking, I wonder what else could have been done with this extra money instead of fix my stupidity. And I shared this with Neil on our team, or he saw it, and we were on our team call today. And he said, the thing he said, and I wrote it down. And I wrote it down because I wanted to share it here today. And here it was. Neil said, why do you need to go through a tragedy just to get your head around the fact that you should charge 50%?
There you go.
Why do we, and you know, why do we have to slam our dick in the door 40 times before we realize this hurts? It's probably not a good idea, and it's not good for the little member down there. Okay, so I want to be clear in a couple things here. There are many different ways to get to a 50% gross profit.
Yes.
So the default way, the easy, simple way is you go, hey, what's a job cost me? Multiply times 2, right? So if labor's cost me 1,000, material cost me 1,000, that's 2,000, and say a permit is $100. So that's what? $2,100, right? That's what I get to pay. I'm just picking numbers here. So multiply 2,100 times 2, sell it at, what's that? $4,200 last I checked, or more, and just don't exceed $2,100 when you produce the work, and you'll have a 50%. So that's the blanket statement. But here I want to talk about a couple things here. First, I want to throw a disclaimer out. There's always somebody that's going to listen to this and go, well, I build new homes, and I can't sell a brand new home construction job for a 50% gross profit. Or I'm a remodeler, I'm a GC, and all this other, guys, there are always outliers. Now, I will say there are home builders and remodelers and things like that that make a 50%. But the big picture here is you have to know, like, what is your overhead? What is your break-even sales point? What is your lead flow? All these things come into play. We have plenty of remodelers that are hitting it out of the park at 50% all day. So I want to acknowledge, guys, that I'm not a moron, and neither you or Steve. We understand there are always outliers, but the guys that are selling their work for 30%, like one guy in one of these threads is like, well, I have a friend who's doing 45 million or 100 million or 200 million as a contractor, and he's got 2,000 employees or whatever the it was. He's not getting a 50%. I'm like, no, he doesn't need to, because that motherfucker has a CFO and they know their numbers and all this other shit. It's a different scenario. But 99.9% of the small contractors that listen to this show, guys, this applies to you, and getting a 50% is the fastest way out of the financial gutter. So before I share a creative idea with everybody, and it's not that creative, do you have any thoughts on anything I just said? Because I know I'm dominating this here today.
No, you're totally fine. This is your arena when this is going on. But I'm just curious. You scream this from the mountaintops, and I know people hear you say this, and they challenge it. I wonder how many actually try. Challenge it all you want, But I mean, let's say for the next 10 leads that you get, try 2 or 3. Just throw them out the window and just see. Just what if? Because if you're not trying it, I don't want to hear your. If you're trying it and it's not working, well, something may be off. There may be something that's just not right. Maybe your overhead is so insanely high that you try to double all that stuff, and you are pricing yourself out of the market. I mean, there is going to be some variables, but do you know? I mean, that's the biggest thing. I'm just curious to how many people that listen to this podcast that know what a break even is, and do they know what their break even is? I mean, I didn't know it for years, and there's nothing wrong with that, because that's just ignorance. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's knowing your numbers, knowing your overhead, truly knowing what your break even analysis is so crucial, so crucial.
I know Steve isn't here today, but do you remember on our last podcast, we were talking about, I think it was one of the last ones, where when he started his business, he's like, if I ain't making $1,000 a day, I'm not interested in getting in my truck. But the big thing that he said here, and this is the mindset thing that you touched on, and Steve said, I set a target that was easy to achieve. That was his mindset going into it. And I personally believe that getting 50% gross profit or better literally starts in your mind with, do you believe that this can be pulled off or not? Because and I'm looking for this other reply. I had somebody in one of the groups today. So the guy who shared about he got kicked in the teeth with his last bathroom remodel.
Yeah.
He asked at the end, he said, I want to bid everything from 50% now on, but my question is, once I start to get a lot of no's, how do you guys stand strong and not cave on pricing, right? And so I just replied, and there's certainly more than this, but for me, here's the low-hanging fruit. Number one, focus on marketing. The more leads you have coming in, the easier it's going to be, right? Number two, master the Shin Fu process, okay? Connect with people and bracket properly. Number three, bank your money and be disciplined. Don't be a drunk sailor in a port somewhere spending all your money, okay? Or a Marine for that matter. And then be confident, and here's the key, your lack of confidence in your price is what kills most deals, not the fact that you're a 50% gross profit.
Exactly. It's confidence and it's connection, and we talk about that so much. It's with how and why the Shin Fu works as well as it does. It's actually connecting with the consumer, connecting with the prospect. Because if you're in the proposal writing business, you're not connecting. You're just writing proposals, you're just sending them off, and it's just, it's lukewarm and it is what it is. But I can't tell you how many jobs I've sold just because I hang out with the person.
Yep.
And when I say hang out, it's just you get on the phone with them a little bit. You follow up with them a little bit. You send them a video. Aren't we in this to connect with people? That's really what contractors are doing. We're doing this to help people. We're not just doing it to I'm going to fix this lady's and screw her, but I'm going to make sure that her stuff's fixed. She's such an asshole. It's like, no, these are humans. You just show up and talk with them, hang out with them a little bit on the phone. I'm not saying hang out in their space. Just hear them out and then get your numbers right. And when you share that, because here's the other thing too, guys, most contractors, I was guilty. I'm sure a lot of you guys listening and gals are guilty of this, that you don't even get customers actually prices after you meet with them.
Yeah.
So you just staying engaged just a little bit more and charging a 50% profit, you're going to get more jobs. Yeah. And that's the confidence.
Yep. Well, that's what happened in the recession of 2008 and all that when I raised our rates. And listen, I was also terrified in the recession. We've been through it. Okay.
Sure.
It's terrifying, guys, when you know that your lead flow is more than cut in half if you haven't branded your company well. And I was at a period in my business where, we struggled because we hadn't spent, this is like I said, the recession was one of the best things that happened to me because I learned how to market and brand without having any money.
Yep.
And so, this time, that's why I talk so much about build your brand, create content, establish yourself as the expert. All these things on top of things we just talked about will help you sell at 50. Like Derek, you do a lot of videos, you do a lot of content. We got Alan Decker, who's, one of the pond guys. Alan does amazing Facebook Live videos just on the fly. And he establishes himself as the expert. People call him and they don't care what the hell it costs because they want what he's building.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he's, there's so many examples about how there's so many things that go into play that will help set you up to sell at those higher rates. And let me be clear, you should not be selling at high rates and high margins if you're not adding massive value. And if you're a schmuck, and if you're not reliable, and if you're not showing up on time, and you look like a bunch of knuckleheads when you get there, and you're disorganized, there's a bunch of chaos, then you don't deserve it. But if you're providing all those things, you better well be getting 50% or better.
I'm rolling scenarios through my head of situations like this. And I work with a landscape contractor here in Nashville, and he doesn't build water features. He doesn't want to do them. He's not interested. So they sub us out. Well, I just found out. So obviously I am definitely not the cheapest guy in town because I feel that we provide such a strong value and such a strong experience. If you want our services, not only our product is amazing, but if you want what we give, it costs, and people are willing to afford that. Well, I charge a shitload, right? Well, I just found out the other day, he marks up my work 33%.
Wow. So let's do the math on that. You're already at a 50 or 60.
It's water features. I'm 60 plus on water features.
Yeah.
And he marks, and I literally was talking to the landscape designer. I was like, you guys have never asked me once for, a percentage or any kickbacks or anything. So what is our relationship? I really don't. She's like, oh, the owner, he marks up your stuff 33%. And I was like, wait, what? You got to be. But for him, he goes in with confidence. He is probably one of the most elite landscape companies in Nashville as far as his experience and his team and how he takes care of everybody. So I know he charges a premium already. And then he marks my stuff up. But the customer doesn't have to worry, right? It's like he doesn't have to worry about me. I don't have to worry about him. He sends me the customer. I get with the customer. We go through the whole thing. Money runs around. Neither one of us have to worry about anything because we're professional. We show up on time. We do all the things we're supposed to do. We take care of the customer. So imagine that. All of that work. So if you're struggling charging 50%, it's head trash, the 6 inches between your ears, as we always say. And then also, you might want to look at your business a little bit. You might want to look at how you carry yourself. You might want to look at how you're seen, because here's the thing. People will socially search you. They will look at your Facebook page. And my cousin, of all people, my mom, this was years ago. It's because he was, I don't know, this was probably 10 years ago. So he was mid-20s. And even before that, his Facebook posts, they were not good. Let's just say that. And because he was young and he's just doing what you do on Facebook at that young age. Anyway, he actually started a roofing company with another friend. Well, they've struggled and struggled and struggled. And then you start seeing his reviews and you start finding out this information. It's because people were social proofing him and seeing how he carried himself 10 years ago. So there's a lot to be said about what you're doing out there in the interweb. So you need to be careful.
Yeah.
You know,
it's funny bring that up. It's funny bring that up. I recently on Contractor Fight TV on YouTube, I did a 6-part series on gross profit. And the last video I did, I think was called the 2 ways you can raise your gross profit. Number 1, you raise your prices. Number 2, you lower what it costs you to produce the job, or a combination of both, which is usually the case. So make a long story short, somewhere in that video, I said something like, maybe you're not selling at these margins because you have no pride in your appearance and this and that. And a guy just made a comment today. It was funny. It made me think of this. He quoted me, I guess, apparently in the video, I said, "You look like, that's why people aren't buying from you." And he goes, "I feel personally attacked, but I needed to hear that." Okay. So guys, everything matters. Everything freaking matters. Everything you do or don't do tells a story, sends a message. And as you're talking about, I mean, dude, I known you for years, and I know the margins you make and the service you offer, and you're top notch. Comes full circle back to why we preach the Shin Fu. Step 1, number 1 is the motive. When you understand what is important to them, people buy for their reasons, not ours. They don't give a shit about our reasons. They care about theirs. And that's why you and so many others in the bridge and stuff are able to sell at these amazing rates. And actually you need less jobs and less leads throughout the year because you're selling at higher margins and you're making more money and you're working less, because at the root of everything, you understand their motives, their reasons for buying. And when you connect on that, that's when you start hearing things like, Derek, you were 3 times the price of the other guys, but I really feel like you get me and we feel safe with you. Yeah. That combined with all the branding shit you do and the social proof and all this, that presents the case for you.
It's relative in the sense, because as you know, in the step 1 in our Shin Fu process, the motive, and I'm digging deeper and deeper and deeper, and I read or I listen to a lot of books, and now I'm into a lot of real mindset energy type stuff. Mm-hmm. Chris Dwyer's led me, down that road a little bit. And what's interesting is I'm fascinated at how people need to feel. They need to feel important. They need to feel heard. They need to feel worth something. And I can't tell you how important it is to look a certain way. And I'm not saying like conform, but look like a contractor, because it makes them feel safe when you're a contractor. Talk like a contractor. I'm not talking about the on the job site type. I'm talking about present yourself well, because there's all these things, because people are just like you. We're all people. We're all humans. And that's a really profound statement, right? Well, when you were growing up, you grew up in a certain way. Well, they grew up in a certain way too. So if you can literally just meet someone somewhere in the middle and understand that they probably had a shitty day, they probably had a shitty upbringing, or maybe they had an amazing upbringing, or maybe they didn't, or maybe their husband is an asshole, maybe their wife is an asshole. There's so much going on in their life that if you just actually listen to them and shut the up and ask them questions about themselves and say, tell me more about that. What do I need to know to help you with this project? And you allow them to do that, your price starts becoming irrelevant. Now, they still got to afford you. I get that. But you're all of a sudden starting to change everything. So if you're charging at 50% and you think it's too high, well, you might want to start identifying with people. It might be, you might be the problem. It might not be the 50% that you need to charge. It might just be you.
That's such a great point, because today in these threads that everybody's whining and complaining about this, a few people are like, well, I tried this 50% thing. I've sent out the last 3 or 4 estimates at a 50%. Nobody calls me back. That's because you don't have a sales process. That's because you're not connecting with people. You don't just double or triple your prices out of the gate, and that you have to have a connection with people. And a lot of guys are like, well, how do I show my value? How do I justify why I'm more money? You justify it by following the Shin Fu and sitting in the motive and understanding them. That's the justification, because now they're connected to you. That's where the trust grows. And it's not easy, but it's very simple what we're teaching. So before we wrap up, I said earlier I was going to give people an opportunity or just an example of creative ways, and I don't think it's that creative. It's just knowing your numbers. We were both talking before this. I've done this in paint contractor. We got guys that are landscapers that do this. We got guys that are remodelers that do this. I understand. So like painting, for instance, painting materials are not a big piece of the pie. Okay. Like on any given paint job, it might be 10 to 15% of the sales price. Okay. So guys, you don't have to just go, if you're in an industry where it's material heavy, like Derek, you're material heavy,
Sure.
Dan, who we were talking about, our landscaper buddy, he's material heavy. If you're a kitchen remodeler, it's material heavy. Cabinets are expensive, rocks, and all this other whatever. So guys, you can play with the cost of goods. You can take your labor. If you pay a guy $20 an hour out the door with labor burden, you don't have to just charge 40 for him. You can charge 60, 90, $100 an hour, like a lot of guys we know are. And then your material, if your material's $5,000 on the job, instead of charging 10 for it to get the 50% gross profit on the material, you can just go, I'm going to mark the material 5, 10, 15%, whatever it makes sense for you. And then the blend of that gets you the 50% or better. And that's where we've seen guys over and over and over. The easy thing to say is just double your job cost and you get 50%. Like that's the vanilla answer that we give people. I just want to give you guys some clarity. I personally believe you should be charging at least 3 times what your labor costs are. Okay. So if I'm paying you 20, I better be charging at least $60 a man hour. Okay. Because now I know, I'm going to be covered for some overages on the job. If we go over the budget, I know you got $60, you subtract the 20, I got $40 left to pay for my overhead and have a net profit. And there's a whole formula behind that stuff. But guys, it's got to be at least 3 times. I know some guys are doing 4, and even more, depending on the skill. So don't lock yourselves in, paint yourselves into a corner here is what I'm saying. And just think, I just got to take labor material, especially you guys are in a really high material cost industry. Okay. Then of course it doesn't make sense, but this is where knowing your numbers comes in. So,
well, I don't even think people even play with the numbers to even look at what it might job costing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the simplest way ever to job cost is to take a piece of paper and write what all the materials cost and write what you paid out for labor and look at your overhead, just real vanilla, and then go do the job, because you probably lost a bunch of money on jobs anyway. You hit a few, just do some real simple stuff. And then after you're done with the job, take those receipts, even while you're in the job, staple those receipts to that piece of paper. Like keep it very rudimentary, and then just look at it and go, all right, well, I made $75 after 3 weeks of work. That sucks. I got to figure something out here. Yeah. Or son of a bitch, that was a day's job and I made $750. You got to start playing with this and understand what's happening, because it goes back to Steve and something I did too. It's like, well, if Steve wants to make $1,000 a day, Well, let me see about what does that look like for me. If I want to make $1,000 a day, all right, then I got to go, well, how long is that going to take me? Is it 1 day or 2 days? Maybe 1 day, it might be 3 days. I'm not really sure. But I started messing with it. And sure enough, I wasn't even marking up materials. I didn't even mark it up. The materials cost what they cost, and I knew it was going to take me a day. And me making $1,000 in a day, holy shit. There were so many days I made $50.
Changes
That
the
was
game,
huge.
man.
And then it was like, how many days can I do this? And it just, so, and then, yeah, I start working on my margins and I start looking at it, but I kind of reverse engineered in the beginning of this. I was just like, I just need to make something per day. And then I started doing the math, and then I started looking at it and going, oh, that was 30. Oh, that was 80. How in the hell did I just get 80% on that? Wow, they're really cool. So I think what's happening, we keep talking about 50% constantly. I think people are just kind of putting the blinders on and not adjusting like you're saying. Because I'm thinking like, and I know nothing about cabinets, but I'm sure mahogany or some specialized wood has got to be really expensive versus just your basic cabinet. So I would imagine if you're trying to double that, you know, mahogany cabinets at $20,000 for cabinets versus some that are 10,000, well, you're probably going to price yourself out of some stuff.
Well, dude, there was a painting company I knew, pretty damn big, by the way, for many years. I don't know if they still do it. This is just a long time ago, and I just haven't kept up. They basically, their whole thing was, hey, here's what it's going to cost us to paint the thing. When we're done, we're handing you the receipt. You're going to call the paint store, give them your credit card number, or you're going to cut a check, and we'll drop it off for you. So whatever we spend, we don't mark up on materials. We need more paint. We go get it. And people actually loved it. Dude, these guys are making 60, 67% gross profit on their jobs because the materials were a wash. They were making 60 to 70 on their labor. They were crushing it. Okay, so this is about what we talk about. You got to know your numbers. You have to find, you know, and in something where, one of the reasons they did it is because, you know, all the big box stores and all this other stuff are, you know, going, you know, this paint is this much a gallon. And then people would start questioning them. And they're like, we don't want to deal with the questioning about materials. We don't give a shit about making materials. And I think what they did is they had their labor charge, and then they had what they called their sundries charge. It's like plastic and tape, and it was a percentage of the labor. And it just washed out across the year to where, you know, they on a $3,000 labor job, they might add $75 for sundries or whatever percentage was. I don't even remember what it was.
Sure.
And then they would buy plastic, they'd buy caulk, they'd buy tape and things like that, buy the pallet, buy in bulk, pay way less for it. And then that little rate that they charge for it ended up making up for it. So there's a million different ways that you guys can get to this. Just get out of your head get it in your head that it can be done. That's really the whole purpose of this thing today. You're not special. You're not different. Your area doesn't matter. The recession doesn't matter. You know, this one of the other last things, and I'll shut up here today, that I've seen in these posts here today, guys fighting and defending this, they're like, well, the economy or my area or my competitors or the illegals or cheap customers. Excuse me. Anytime that we use those things as the reason, we become a victim. And as long as you're a victim, you are not going to have the success that you want to have. You are exactly where you are in your life and in your business because of the choices you have made on your own. You have the power to do anything you want. And I'll end with this, and you can close us out here, Derek, with whatever you want to say. Do you remember back in the day when Steve, and I know he's not here today, started preaching from the pulpit in the pond industry about hitting 50% and better? Everyone thought he was crazy. How many people in those first couple of years did we hear from that came back to Steve and said, I went out and I tried to prove you wrong because I wanted to call you up because you were so arrogant and all this other stuff. I tried to prove you wrong, and now I have $300,000 in my bank account.
It's countless. Guys, it's countless.
Prove it. Try to prove us wrong here. Okay? Prove us wrong. But let me say, Steve was able to do it. You've been able to do it. I've been able to do it because we committed. We committed to being business people, and we committed to learning how to sell. So don't just write these bids, throw them out with more money, and think it's going to work. It ain't going to work. You got to learn how to sell. So I'm done.
It's funny you say learn how to sell, and it's really just learn how to listen is really what it boils down to. But it's on that post today. It made me think of the elephant story. And I'm sure a lot of you
yeah,
have
you
heard
posted
the
that.
elephant
I saw
story.
that.
I heard it years ago, and some of you may or may have not, and look it up. But the premise is basically an elephant from a very young age is tied. There's a stake driven in the ground and there's a rope tied around his foot. Well, that stake at that very young age of the elephant, he can't move it. He's too small. He just can't. For years and years and years, he feels that stake. Well, as the elephant gets older and bigger, they still use the same rope and the same stake, but he's conditioned himself to think, as long as this rope is around my ankle, I cannot move. And obviously, this huge, I don't even know what an elephant weighs, but a load could easily just nudge that thing and it would come right out of the ground, right out of the ground. But it's the conditioning. So what has happened for a lot of contractors, they have conditioned themselves to think that they can't pull that rope and move that stake because everybody else said you can't do it. Well, you got two cats right here saying that you can, so prove us wrong.
Yeah, we have several hundred others that are doing it as well that aren't on here right now. So, yeah. Well, awesome, man. Well, good hanging here with you today. I know Steve, I think he's in Jamaica right now. See, because there's profit, right? I don't know. Call me crazy, but anyway, guys, appreciate y'all listening here today. Share this with another contractor. Give us a review wherever you're listening to this. And for God's sake, get out there, change your thinking. Stop stealing from your family. Stop stealing from yourself. Have some damn respect. It's okay for you to make money. Okay? The world accepts the fact that doctors and lawyers make hundreds of thousands a year or whatever, and engineers can make money and this and that. Well, so can a contractor. But it all starts between our ears. So anyway, we appreciate you guys listening, and we'll talk to you guys next time on the Contractor Sales Academy podcast.
Later,
Gator.